Hi, I'm Jeff Meads from Tennessee Twin, and welcome to the first of my top tips for better Facebook Live broadcasts. So, if like us, you are gigging musicians, you're probably finding yourself in a brave new world, and that is having to put out your music now by Facebook Live broadcasts thanks to quarantine lockdowns. I was discussing this actually with a good friend of ours, Simon Birds, the country music DJ, and he was suggesting, well, why don't you put together a bit of a hints and tips about how to do this since you've worked in audio and video for so long. So that's exactly what I plan to do over the next few days. We're putting together sort of tips based around one subject per day in trying to help musicians get a little bit better in terms of the sound quality and the picture quality that they put out for their Facebook Live broadcast. So without further ado, let's start with today's subject, and that is your room. So the room is an interesting subject. It's about the biggest contributor to the sound that you will be putting out on your broadcast. It's much more important than the microphone you use and all the other fancy sort of audio equipment that we tend to lust over and buy. So we better discuss that first, I think. A little bit about sound first of all. What does a microphone actually pick up? Well, a microphone works a bit like your ear. It receives the sound waves in and converts them to electrical energy to send down to recorders or broadcast or whatever we're doing. However, it's a little bit different to your ear in as much as your ears and your brain work together to mask out sounds that it doesn't want to hear and just tune into the ones it does. You can see this at work anytime you've ever been in a bar or a busy cafe or something like that, and you've been having a conversation with a friend. All the hubbub in the background gets tuned out and you only listen in to what it is they're saying. Microphones unfortunately don't work that way. Microphones pick up literally everything. They pick up you, your sound, your singing, your performance of your instrument, but they'll also pick up any of the background noise. We'll talk about background noise sources in a moment, but the biggest one and most important one is going to be the sound of the room itself. When we put sound into a room and try and pick it up with a microphone, as we're doing in a broadcast or any recording, the microphone will pick up the direct sound from the source, you're singing your instrument, straight to the microphone. But it will also pick up the sound waves that disappear off to one side and hit the walls, the floors, the ceilings, and all the objects in your room, and then bounce back around the room and eventually hit the microphone. If you've ever played pool, when you break in pool, you'll see all the balls bang around the table, and sound waves do exactly that same thing in a room. Now, if you go to a recording studio, they will spend a huge amount of time and effort to make those reflections either disappear completely or be very, very controlled so that they record, the microphones pick up the best sound possible. Now, clearly, we don't really have, most of us at least, the opportunity to do that in our home that we're going to be broadcast from. So what do? Well, the first thing we can do is try and find a room that has low ambient noise. That's making sure that we've turned off things like washing machines, dryers, all those things that can be appliances that can be going on in the background and we kind of tune out in our daily lives, but those sounds will be picked up. We can turn off things like the bings and bongs in our phones and our computers and so on and so forth, because of course, while they're great for telling us we've got emails and texts and things, not great for a broadcast. Now, the next thing we can do is we can start to think about the room we're going to use and how it might affect the sound we've got. You might not have much of a choice here. If you live in a reasonable sized house with a couple of bedrooms and things like that, then you might try out different types of recordings and broadcasts in each room to see what they sound like. However, some golden rules here. Very highly reflective rooms, kitchens are usually favourite culprit, don't tend to sound very good. The reason for that, and the same goes with bathrooms, is that the hard surfaces you see, things like the cabinetry and the worktops and the windows, reflect sound very, very well. And you've probably witnessed this if you've ever seen anybody try to record or broadcast from a kitchen. A good room might have lots of big, soft, squidgy furniture in it. Squidgy furniture, things like sofas and beds and heavy curtains, are great for turning some of the sound that you make as a musician into heat. It converts it to very microscopic amounts of heat. But the important thing is it goes away. It doesn't come back so much towards the microphone, and that cleans up the sound that goes down the microphone now into your broadcast. So your living room is probably going to be favourite, where you've got your sofas and things. But also if you're in a smaller apartment or bedsit type of thing, then the bed is your friend. A mattress with all the bedding on it is a very good absorber of sound energy. So actually doing it from there, while we might have to look at the visuals of that a little bit, can be very beneficial from a sonic point of view. Now, a little bit about distance. One of the things with microphones, you'll notice when you sing on stage into a stage microphone, or if you're in the recording studio, you'll sing pretty close up to a microphone. And we do that on purpose as an engineer. That's so that we get the most of your sound, your performance, and the least of the background sound as possible going into the recorder or through the PA to the audience. A similar principle works if you're doing a Facebook Live. We want as much of your performance to go into the microphone and as least of the rest of the sound of the room and ambient noises as possible. One way to do that is to just get closer to the microphone. The more closer you get, the louder that your voice will be, and the quieter by comparison the sound of the room will be, and that's always a good thing. However, microphones can be slightly directional depending on what sort they are. They can be very directional in some cases. So if you get very close to the performer, you might well end up, for example, if they're playing an acoustic guitar, either get too much guitar or too much vocal. Coming away a little bit balances that out somewhat. So this is all a bit of a compromise in terms of getting the distances and things right, to get the right balance of the performance and the least in the room, but also making sure we get a good balance between, say, singing and the performance of like a piano or electric or an acoustic guitar. The final thing to say on that subject is that, of course, we do need to be far enough away for the visuals to work. And we'll think about the visuals a bit later on in the week with some hints and tips on getting that a bit better too. So, to sum up, if we're trying to get great sound, then first of all, get rid of all the unwanted sounds we possibly can. Let's start off with the ones we can just simply switch off. Your washing machines and your dryers and so on and so forth, your bings on your computer. Then try and get rid of as much of the reflective sound of the room as possible. So we're going to do that by getting as close as we can with a reasonable approach to the performance itself. And we're going to try and dampen the room out by trying to choose a room that has naturally a lot of good damping, with the big soft and squidgy objects like your sofas, your curtains, your cushions and so on and so forth. And also getting close enough, of course, to try and cut those out as best we can. All of this is a compromise. There is no perfect answer. It doesn't matter how much expensive equipment you bring to the picture. The room is always going to contribute, and getting that under control is one of the best things you can do in terms of starting off. Lastly, test it. Test the sound you're going to get. The way I do this is to create just a simple test page on Facebook that you can invite maybe 1 or 2 friends to ahead of your main performance. You can rig up your gear, you can try a few different setups in different rooms and so on with a couple of trusted friends, broadcast to them. Even better if they're not in your household and somewhere remote. They can give you feedback in terms of how clear things were. One final point when bringing microphones and things close to you is, of course, remember you can also overload the microphone. Myself, I can sing pretty loud. It's just a thing that I tend to do. While you can, if you're singing in an acoustic ensemble, you can judge quite quickly your own level between your voice and, say, another singer or an instrument. But what's going down the microphone, of course, you've got no feedback on. So just watch out that you're not going to overload the equipment by bringing the microphone too close. Finally, I do see people using PA systems and miking themselves and their instrument through the PA system, and then putting their smartphone or camera or whatever it is to do the broadcast and taking the sound from the room. I would advise against that. Simple reason being, if you put sounds through a PA, that's much, much louder. It's a very full range, loud amplified signal, and the room effect will become much, much greater. It'll be much more difficult to control the sound being picked up from the microphone if it's coming through a big PA system or even a modest PA system than it is to control it from a voice and an instrument acoustically. So whilst it's kind of fun to add effects and things like that through your PA system, personally, I think the audience is probably going to enjoy your performance much better if it's just your acoustic voice and your instrument's performance. So I guess that wraps it up for today. I do hope you've enjoyed it and found this useful. I'm going to try and do one of these every day for the next few days, moving on to different subjects like microphones and Wi-Fi and video and things like that over the next few days. So if you want to hear a bit more, then please do subscribe to the channel using the button below and maybe even ring the old bell icon. If you've got questions, please do put them in the comments and I'll try to either answer them in another video, a later video, or maybe even the comments themselves. So meanwhile, stay safe everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.